There is a great tension in our AP classes. Like, we have to get these kids writing essays early and often, and if our students are going to succeed on their exams, they have to do a lot of writing. But if you're anything like me, while you agree with the benefit and the efficacy of lots of writing practice, there's something in you that hesitates to assign another DBQ or LEQ or whatever. And why is that? Because this guy's got to grade it. And as soon as I assign that DBQ, my head starts racing because I know in a couple of days there will be a stack of them on my desk and ain't nobody paying me to stay late and grade all these essays, so what do we do? Well, that's what I want to talk about in this video and in next week's video. How do we get faster at grading student writing? Because if we get faster, then we can give kids more practice without it requiring all-nighters from us to give them meaningful feedback. So in this video, I'm just going to lay down some general principles that I've learned over the years, and in next week's video, I'm going to offer you some actual tools that will help speed things up. So if you're not already subscribed, well, it might just behoove you to do so. Okay, principle number 1 for increasing our speed in grading: don't fuss about elegance. We're history teachers because we love reading good historical writing, but in these essays, we're not looking for elegant arguments, we're only looking for evidence of good historical thinking. So if a student splits in an infinitive or ends a sentence with a preposition or uses passive construction, I don't worry about it. Let their ELA teacher worry about such things. I'm only here to assess the actual skill of historical thinking. Is it there or is it not? And I often tell my students that they could write the most magnificent contextualization paragraph in the history of history writing, or they could write a contextualization paragraph that is barely acceptable, and both are in the same point. Now, if you're the kind of teacher who feels like, you want to help them avoid split infinitives and use active construction and all that makes for good writing, then I commend you, and it's likely that your students will be better writers for that kind of feedback. But it certainly will not speed things up for you. But for me, the only reason I ever comment on grammar or syntax is if it affects their ability to demonstrate historical thinking. Principle number 2, teach your students writing formulas. Teach them to write the thesis, for example, with whatever formula makes sense to you. Now, I happen to use the John Irish formula. Although X because A and B, therefore Y, where X equals their counter argument, A and B equals specific historical evidence pulled from their paragraphs, and Y equals their argument. Now, I know a lot of people take issue with that formula. That's fine, but just come up with a different one. Or another example, when they're writing body paragraphs, teach them to start with a topic sentence, mention the document that supports their topic sentence, and then begin their analysis with the words, "this shows," or "this demonstrates," which is going to help them tie the evidence back to their argument. And there's a formula for just about every point on the rubric except for complexity, so teach them to write formulaically. And here's why that speeds things up for you. When the essays are formatted in a familiar way, you don't have to spend your time wondering what the student is trying to do in this paragraph or in that sentence. When they begin a sentence with "this shows," you know exactly what they're about to do. Or when a sentence in the first paragraph begins with "although," you know the thesis is coming. And if students do that, it will seriously speed up your grading because you don't have to spend time searching for the skills. Of course, the caveat here is that if they use the formula and they don't perform the skill enough to get the point, then you do have to go searching for it elsewhere, but still, a lot of students will do it, and a lot of students will get the point, and it'll speed things up for you. Now, of course, they're not required to adhere to such formulas for the exam, and so maybe you'd want to go another way. But in my experience, they really like the formulas because it gives them a roadmap for exactly what they ought to be doing and when. And, there's always going to be a handful of students who would get a 5 with or without me, and they just write elegant, non-formulaic essays like it was nothing, and those might take a little while longer to grade, but in general, most of my students take the formula route, and it really speeds things up for me. And the third principle for speeding up your grading is this: don't always grade for all the points. Like, on many occasions, I've had my students do all the work for a DBQ, like reading the documents, interpreting the documents, grouping the documents, etc., only to write a thesis, because they actually need to do all of that if they're going to write an intelligent thesis. And then I'll just grade the thesis, which is way easier than a whole essay. It's only a couple of sentences at most. Or maybe I'll do that for contextualization, or maybe a single body paragraph, or whatever. That enables me to give them more granular, meaningful feedback on one particular skill. At other times, I've had them write an entire DBQ or LEQ, and I've told them I'm only going to be grading them for 1 point on the rubric, or maybe 2 points. And they don't know which point it is, and so they do the whole thing as best they can, but it does speed things up greatly on my end. Now, as I said, next week I'm going to be giving you some tools that have helped speed things up for me, but for now, I hope those principles help. Okay, if you have any other principles that have helped you speed things up, then let us know in the comments below. I certainly don't have a corner on this topic, and I'd love for all of us to learn from each other. If I find a bunch of good ones in there, maybe we'll do a part 2 to this. If you're not already subscribed, you might want to go ahead and do so that you don't miss anything I publish. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Heimler out.